Hello everybody, welcome back to another edition of the EcoStruxure Machine Expert HVAC. I'm your host, Leandro Mada, and in this video what we're going to see is how we can configure the Ethernet port on the Modicon M172 in order to access to different devices and how we can access to this controller. So let's go to the software. So I'm going to start creating a project. For this controller, okay, the settings will be similar. So if you take a look over here in the top, we're gonna have the Ethernet port, okay, and if you're using the M172 optimized, it doesn't have the Ethernet port. In order to have it, you need a plugin. So for the performance, here you have the configuration if you want this to be just a server, in other words, slave, or you can select this one to be client server. So the M172 will have the possibility to read and write data to other servers or slaves, in other words. So this is the main configuration. So we need to understand if the PLC is going to be like a database of information, or the PLC is going to access to different servers or slave in the network. Okay, so that's one thing. Okay, then we already have the possibility to use the AO scanner, but that I'm going to explain that later. Just add the device that you want based on what you have over here, and then you should be able to access the data easily. But that will be for next chapters. So the idea now is to understand all the different configurations that we have in the Ethernet port. Okay, so first we need to identify if it's going to be server or client server. If we need a plugin for Ethernet, then if you're using, for example, the M172 optimized, okay, here you can see that I have the plugin, okay, but we have the CAN expansion, RS2 and RS485, okay. The other solution that we have, if we want Ethernet, would be to use the M172 secure interface, okay. So we have another layer there in communications. So now that we have already defined how we're going to use the Ethernet port, okay, it's time to define the parameters for the Ethernet port that we're going to have. So my recommendation is to go to BIOS parameter and configure the Ethernet port of the controller. So in my case, I'm going to use, for example, 192.168, which is the one that I have right now on the controller that I'm going to show you. 172, default gateway 192.168.1.1, and even if the subnet mask is the same, I prefer to modify that over here so we know that this is the configuration that I want and it's the one I have. Now, by default, this port, okay, are disabled, okay, which is for the FTP, and this one is to connect to the controller via Ethernet. So I'm going to enable this, okay. Default is 65535. That basically by default is disabled. Here I'm going to use the default also 80, and here I'm going to use the file 2, which is the one that we use to connect. And if you go setup communication and we use Modbus TCP, that's why I use file 2. Okay. Now I go here, I just put the IP address. Okay, and okay. So this is the configuration that you need, okay, for the M172 in order to use over Ethernet. So you also have the ACP, but that probably I can explain that in a different video because I need a master for that. Okay, if I'm around, that's it. Okay, now once we have completed this part, we have a few more things on the programming. So if you go to the library tree, we have some diagnostics. So target, target variables. Verify MAC address. So here we have information for the MAC address for a device. Okay, in case we wanted to use it in the code. What else? Models master. No, this is later. I'm going to show you that later. So basically, if you're going to use the function, the IO scanner, we have this for structures arrays that give us further information about the device I have already configured. Okay, but that I'm going to explain that later. And the other thing that I want to show you is that something that we're going to cover in the next videos is that we have the possibility to use these function blocks in order to access to different devices on the network, to different servers. So the same Modbus function that we saw for Modbus Serial, we have a different function block in order to use on Modbus TCP. Okay, so the configuration of this part of the video, of this particular module, is to focus on how we can connect to read and write information from different devices on the network. Okay, so the idea now is for you that we have two methods, one using function blocks and the other one using IO scanner, that I'm going to explain that later, as the same as I have explained on the Modbus Serial. So those are the things that you need to know, basically. Configuring the BIOS parameter, and then go into here and select if it's going to be Modbus, client server or server only. Okay, and then if by any reason you are not able to connect via Ethernet to the controller, then I would recommend you to use, for example, a miniUSB cable. Go over here in the Ethernet parameters and read this information, because probably these parameters are by default and you are disabled the communication via Ethernet to the controller. Okay, so bear that in mind. So now that you have already configured those parameters, the best thing for you would be to connect. So I'm going to connect. Yes. And then once you connect it to the controller, I recommend you to make a download all, because once you make the download all, it will send not only the code of the PLC, but it will download all the different configuration that we have. And that includes the BIOS parameter, it includes the configuration of the Ethernet port of Modbus Serial, and also include the display. But in this case, I'm not going to focus on the display, okay? But it will send that to the M172. So if I open this, try to send the 72, okay. Just to wait for it to be back online. Something very important, if you have another application, you don't want to override the Ethernet part, then you just need to do this. Yes. So you will download the default parameters that we have. Yes, reboot. And now this will prepare the PLC to be master slave, or much better, client server. Okay, so just going to connect once again, just to show you that the download has successfully and I'm connected. Okay, so this is it about the configuration for the Ethernet port, and it doesn't explain too much. Just go to the BIOS parameter, configure the Ethernet IP settings, okay, and subnet mask, default gateway, and also the port. Then on the Ethernet port, just define how is the behavior that you're going to use. Okay, so you can use as a server or client server. Okay, then later in the next videos, what we're gonna see is how we can use the Ethernet port using the function blocks, okay, or the IO scanner. But that's going to be the next video. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I see you on the next one.